welcome. For those who don't know me, my name is Alana O'Connell. I'm part of the marketing team here at Holistiplan. I'm so glad you're joining us today. I do have some quick housekeeping notes before we get started. We are recording today's session and we will share that recording with you later this week. If you have questions, please send them in that Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. We'll keep an eye on those as we go through the session today. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Emily Rassam. Emily is a partner and senior financial planner at Archer Investment Management. With over 18 years of experience, Emily specializes in helping tech professionals and pre-retirees make confident financial decisions that balance today's priorities with tomorrow's goals. She's been recognized as an Investopedia Top 100 Financial Advisor, a Forbes Top Women Advisor, and an Investment News 40 Under 40 Rising Star. And she serves as a thought leader and speaker for Holistiplan, where she helps advisors like you strengthen their tax and estate planning strategies. With that, let's dive in. Emily, today we're talking about how important it is to build trust with clients and how exactly to do that. And I'm so excited to get your take on this. I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, so I'm so excited for you to share it with the group today.
Yeah, and I think just in conversation, you and I have been talking about like at what point in the process does tax planning come up, or what point of the process do you build this trust and connection and have these key conversations? And as we've talked about, it's the discovery meeting really sets the stage for, building on that relationship and just winning more relationships, right? So I think we kind of came up with this topic as something that um, really starts to build into how you're going to work with clients in the long run. So we wanted to really just focus on this one meeting type and how to use it in the right way. Like, what are all the purposes of this discovery meeting? What do we want to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to offer not, a pitch to a prospect, being able to offer them insights and like trust and accuracy right away is such a strong place to start.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll put my slide deck here, share and make it big. Okay. So differentiating ourselves, my LinkedIn post today, I posted it earlier today, was a picture of me as a baby, 19 years ago, 21 years old. And I was doing the a financial fellowship program. It's basically an internship in this industry where you're getting licensed and you're learning everything about the industry. And they created this brochure for me that says all the things that I do, right? Baby Emily, 21 years old, and it says I do tax strategy and business succession planning and estate planning and all these strategies. And it just makes me think, and I have this saved because it just reminds me that anyone can put on their website or on their brochure, we do tax planning, we do tax strategy, we work with equity compensation or business owners or whatever that niche is, because you can really just put that on any website. So how do you differentiate yourself in a world where anyone can put this on their website and brochure? So what are some ways that you can look different, sound different, and be more effective in a discovery meeting? And say somebody walks away, if they're interviewing three different advisors, how is Emily different? How is Archer Investment Management different? How are they actually practicing this space? Because I'll tell you, if you put 21-year-old Emily, so 19 years ago, on a call side by side with Emily today, it's going to sound significantly different, even if the websites or brochures look the same. So I always think about that with differentiation is kind of then taking it apart from there and how do you make that sound a little bit different. So Alana did my intro. What a lot of advisors who are on these calls like to know are really just who do I work with? What's the size of my team? Support, all of that. So I'll add that into. So we're a small RA, fully virtual. So all of our clients work with us over Zoom, but 240 households, 370 million assets under management. That's myself, my business partner, and then we have a couple of planners, operations support, and a CSA, and a fractional financial behavior officer, which is really just somebody who has a financial therapy background that supports our practice. So we are going to talk about that a little bit. So the emotions around money and the emotions that come up. And that's another area of differentiation is saying, okay, not only do I have fantastic, sophisticated tools like Holistiplan to help support this, and I have this knowledge and expertise in tax planning, but how do I support you through the emotional aspect of that? I just had 5 days ago my estimated tax payment come out of my bank account on the 15th. It's painful, right? So there are these experiences we have when we file our taxes or have surprises or have a big tax bill flow out that we want to understand about our clients. So we'll talk about how do we approach that, not from just the technical expertise aspect, but how do we support our clients through these decisions and emotions that come with each of those areas? So today we're going to talk about really who this call is meant for today. What is the discovery meeting meant for, and how do we use it as a fit check to make sure you have the right person in the right seat? How do you demonstrate that expertise and set yourself apart from whatever that version of you was that just entered this industry? And how are you different than that version of yourself or other advisors that are maybe competitive to you? We want to talk about the emotions that come with some of these big decisions and how that plays into how you talk about your work in the discovery meeting and how do you work with the client ongoing. So where does that fit in? Some of the word choice, we'll just talk about some of the things that I specifically try to pepper in to again differentiate, sound different, and then key conversations that happen. So just letting somebody know in the discovery meeting, what's going to happen next? How am I going to help support you during this process? So I did something. I asked, so Lana, remember I asked you for feedback from my surveys from last year. So it took me 2 weeks to open this document. So I asked Alana and I asked the team at Holistiplan, I want to see what the feedback was from the webinars next year because I want to be effective here with you. Advisors that are on this call, anyone that supports advisors that's on this call, I want to make sure that you are here and you are understanding what we're going to talk about and that I'm going to meet that expectation because any negative feedback that I got was typically in the surveys, somebody who was looking for something in that topic or looking for maybe a different level of technical expertise or a different topic, and that wasn't what was covered. So today I want to talk about what are we going to cover today? Because if this is not what you're here for, I want to invite you to spend the rest of your hour doing something that's meaningful to you, that's going to bring you some value. So you're here today because we want to talk about the discovery meeting, the beginning of the relationship. That's what we're going to focus on today. So today is not technical tax expertise. It's talking about the conversation, the important piece of how do we talk to and demonstrate some of our value to prospective clients. So this is meant for advisors who want those good, meaningful, typically comprehensive relationships with clients. Today, we're going to walk away with strategies to strengthen your discovery meeting process. Again, I'm one advisor that operates in one place with one particular niche client. So this is just the way I do it. And this is just what's worked over time. I've kind of slowly changed my process over time to be effective. And I've studied this in a bunch of different ways. So what's effective? What works for me? I'm going to share that with you. Everyone's process is a little bit different. So it's just to pepper in what my ideas are there. How do I qualify leads, get to the know quickly, do that fit check, make sure that that is somebody who's going to be happy with me long term, right? That's what I'm looking for in my relationships. And then how do you increase the engagement rate? So how do you increase the close rate or the number of people who want to continue talking to you after this process? So that's not what you're here for. It was good to see you. See you later. What we're going to talk about is also, so what is the purpose? So what are we doing in this discovery meeting? So when you're taking a call or when you're taking a meeting and somebody is coming onto your Zoom call or coming into your meeting and they're trying to learn about you and you're trying to learn about them. So the biggest purpose of that call is a fit check. It's both ways. So are you somebody who's going to be happy here? And is what I do a match for what you're seeking? Really, that's what we're looking for, is that match. And so are there needs in alignment with what you do? Are there values in alignment with yours? Are there expectations in alignment with what your expectations are? Or how you do your work. So it's asking a lot of those questions to try to get what they're looking for. Who are they? What do they need? And is that who you do your best work for? So as you grow in this business, it's important to keep whittling that down. So every single year, and especially just at the beginning of the year, we've got fresh new year energy. It's figuring out who do I love to serve and what do I want to offer those people? So what are the services that I want to offer these clients that are walking in the door? What are their needs? What's their avatar? So if you haven't gone through that type of an exercise, it's literally writing out, this is the age group that I want to work with. These are their problems and concerns. These are their hesitations for hiring an advisor. And so it's going through this whole process to write out that document. So in my firm, we have 2 client avatar documents. We have one for tech professionals that we serve. So we serve a lot of mid-career tech professionals, typically 35 to 55 years old. And so these are people who typically are in a particular life stage and income. So typically, if they work for a big tech employer, they often have equity compensation. They're well compensated. Typically, to meet our minimum, they've already accumulated $1 million. And so we also have some other heuristics that we screen for. We want to work with nice people. So we want to work with people who are typically kind and intentional and easier to work with, that are, really going to trust the process and work with us well. So it's really screening for from a personality fit. Where are they on that kind of personality spectrum? Are they really neurotic and anxious, or are their needs maybe different than what we work really well with? So there are certain types of clients I just know I don't work well with. And those are clients. So you all know that we love to do a lot of tax planning and estate planning and review insurances and do retirement projections and spend a lot of the time in the meeting talking about their goals and their values and taking them where they want to go with money and the purpose of money in their life, right? And if somebody is really, really, really focused on investments and return and wanting to talk about the portfolio and wanting to trade individual stocks and just kind of digging into some topics that don't make sense for me, I can't do my best work. I can't do my best work for somebody who's not willing to share information with me that I need to build a financial plan. I'm not going to be able to do my best work for people who maybe don't trust or value some of the processes that I take people through. So it's really trying to find out, are you somebody that I'm going to want to enjoy working with and do my best work for? Because you all have clients that will email you, and anyone, even in your workplace, right? Their email comes up, their name is in your inbox, and you've met, oh man, what do they need today? Right? So you've got those clients that are just don't feel like a good fit. It doesn't feel like a good match to work with, right? So the types of clients you want to work with are ones that you love and you're curious about and you're interested in them and you want to help them solve their problems and you want to do research on the things that are going on in their lives and help them with it. And so sometimes there's just you can sense it. It's like a good date or a bad date. You go on a bad date and it's just not a match. And it's not somebody I want to keep talking to and go on a second or third date with. Same thing with this discovery meeting. Is this a good date? Is this somebody like, are you going to be happy here? And is what I do a match for what you're seeking? It's really what we're trying to get at. So it's really getting to know them. And we're going to talk about how we do that and get to the know quickly. So anyone who did Sandler sales training, like that's, I think, one of their phrases I'm going to steal, but it's really finding out very, very quickly if they're looking for something different. So I just had an intro discovery meeting yesterday with somebody who is looking for just a project plan, short term. We do comprehensive work, ongoing work. That's not a fit. And so it's finding out very quickly, that's what you're seeking. Yep, there are planners that do that work. This is where you can find somebody like that. And this is really what you want to seek. And so it's finding out, it's not trying to convince that person that they need something that they don't know that they need. Maybe you can be successful at doing that, but it's really trying to find somebody who is seeking the level of work that you do. So sometimes that's explaining to them, there are hourly planners, project planners, advice only, advice and investments, and here's where I fit in on that spectrum. Is that what you're seeking? Is that what you're looking for? So finding out really what they're seeking and what brought them here. So a lot of times I can understand some of their expectations based on understanding, what has brought them to this point. So have they worked with an advisor before? How did that process work? How did that go? What went really well and what didn't go well? So here's one opportunity to start to demonstrate a little bit of tax planning expertise, is finding out a little bit about what tax planning has been done previously. So it's asking about that whole advisor relationship and what went well, what didn't go well, but asking specific questions like, hey, has your advisor been working with you on understanding what your tax return is going to look like for the year, or do you typically end up with surprises? Has that advisor also helped you with your equity compensation decisions, like exercising your stock? I know you work at this company that has incentive stock options. Is that something that they've typically helped guide you through? So understanding, one, what their expectations are. So if they're expecting you to beat the market significantly, or they're expecting you to maybe prepare their tax returns and that's not what you do, or they're expecting you to save a bunch of money on taxes through these loopholes. We've all had those discovery meetings with people who've been on TikTok way too much, or YouTube, and they've found these loopholes and like, can you help me find these sneaky ways to save taxes? I mean, maybe some of you on the call, that's what you do. That's not what I do. So it's just helping to set expectations of what is tax planning? What have you received in the past? What is your history with your tax planning and tax returns? So have you had big surprises in the past? Have you done certain techniques? So it's good to know if they've done things like backdoor Roth contributions. Are they maximizing contributions into tax advantaged accounts? If your niche is really that retiree kind of group, because that's our second avatar, which I forgot to mention, is kind of that retiree group, has their advisor helped them with or talked about Roth conversions or donor advised funds? So it's just finding out what are they familiar with? And a lot of times they'll get that, oh, you know what? I've read about that. Or my coworker uses the mega backdoor Roth contribution. I don't even know like what that is. My advisor hasn't helped me with that. So just being able to kind of dig into, okay, this is the type of person I'm working with. These are the types of concerns they might have. And these are the types of problems they might run into. And just being able to ask those questions that demonstrate this is a topic I cover. And often it's using some stories. So very often I'll tell the client, yep, oh yeah, I've got a client I met with this morning that has the same concern, and this is kind of how we helped them. Or I've got an email in my inbox right now about somebody, I really do. I have an email in my inbox right now about somebody who wants to make an 83B election. They were just granted some stock at the beginning of the month. And so this is something that we deal with every single day. This is what we work on every single day, somebody exactly like you. So being able to kind of show that, demonstrate that, again, it's that fit check. And it's also getting the buy-in for financial planning process and surface some of those deal breakers early. Like if they're not going to be willing to share information or they're not going to have their partner involved. That's a deal breaker for me. So I typically, if there are two people in the household we're doing planning for, I don't like to just deal with one. So it's those types of issues that you want to understand. It also gives the opportunity to kind of show or demonstrate some of that value. And I'll show you a couple slides on that too. Okay, so for any of you that are have read the Jump AI Insights report that just came out recently, which I think was super, super, super interesting in our industry, because just looking across all of the different types of advisor meetings that have happened throughout the last year, there's a whole Holistiplan slide in there as well. But one of the insights that they came up with is looking at actual meetings when tax planning is discussed. Calls are 16% more likely to end with a positive client sentiment, right? So there are all these ways to measure our client relationship. But one thing that's kind of interesting about this insights is that it allows us to see which clients talked favorably and gratefully at the end of a call. That's kind of one of the things they're seeking. So we know that talking about tax planning, we're going to end in more positive language, positive sentiment, and that's a lift. Anywhere we can find a lift is good. So we know that talking about tax planning can enhance relationships. We know that people are expecting tax planning, but it also increases how favorably they see the meeting, how favorably they see you, and how favorably they talk in the meeting about the meeting. So that's an interesting metric that came out of that I wanted to grab. I've got one more later in the slide deck too. So what are some ways that you can kind of demonstrate your expertise? So part of it is ahead of the discovery meeting. I post on LinkedIn at least a few times a week. That's kind of my one channel. And we also have blog articles on our website. So we know that typically when somebody books an intro or discovery meeting with us, and they're going to have that first discussion, a lot of people have taken a few minutes to go on website or a few minutes to go on LinkedIn and kind of check us out ahead of time. So I wanted to give an example of ways that typically that demonstration can kind of be made. So this is kind of a post I did a couple weeks ago that just talked about type of client I might work with. So again, like tech exec is somebody that I typically will work with. And this is just talking about some of the different types of strategies. And I won't make you read all this small font on this webinar, but just talking about from a case study perspective, who do I work with? What are the concerns? What is the savings that maybe were found? What are some of the topics that I maybe cover? And then how does that all kind of tie together? So very often on our LinkedIn posts or on our blog posts, it's really writing to that specific avatar, that specific person that you're working with to demonstrate this is the kind of client I work with. And clients will sometimes find me on LinkedIn, but what's interesting is even clients that find me through somewhere else will often reference in the meeting, yeah, I checked you out ahead of the call. So that's a really good way to say, here's who I work with, here are the problems I solve, here are the topics that I cover. A lot of these are tax planning topics, tax optimization topics, and these are some things that I do. Same thing on your blogs. What I'm finding is a lot of the AI searches that are kind of pointing people in our direction are pulling information from specific blog posts that we've written. So we'll write blog posts on AMT, or if you're leaving an employer, right? So you're changing jobs. What do you need to know about your equity compensation? So exercising options within that 90-day window or whatever that might be. Emily, do you come up with your LinkedIn posts on your own or do you get help from marketing service? It's all me. So I know there are some good services that are out there, but also if you follow a bunch of different advisors that post regularly, you can kind of get some good ideas and kind of build some content out there. But really, at the end of every meeting, I write down ideas to put into LinkedIn. So very often I'll say, if I helped somebody right now, today with this particular issue. So my call right before this one was helping a client who wanted to give gifts, bigger gifts to each of their two kids for down payments on their home. She's like, what's the tax impact of that? And so thinking through, okay, if we sell investments, we have capital gains. Here's how that works. Here's how we can model it. And she wanted to know, should I make estimated tax payments if we're going to create these capital gains? And what are the, how does a gift tax return work? So educating her on that kind of process. So that's a LinkedIn post, right? So I can think about it almost every single meeting. You can come up with a little bit of a snippet to say, here's what happened in this meeting. And that content actually does best for me is when people can see real world examples. So, and I can probably take this post, this kind of a longer post for me, and break it down into just talking about each of these separate topics and kind of where that value is. So that's kind of one way to demonstrate that value. And I do see a lot of people are coming and reading some of these posts or reading some of our blog posts. It's also, there are a lot of different services that will look at the traffic per blog post that you can see. So we've seen like which blog posts have done a little bit better, like ESPP. I wrote an article like 3 years ago on ESPP plans. I've written some articles about specific benefits for some of the big tech employers, and some of those have gotten some better hits. So we'll go back in and kind of optimize those and refresh those articles and make them longer. So it's just kind of tracking what's fitting. But also I ask people, of course, like, how did you find me? But do you remember if you found me on LinkedIn, you know, do you happen to see or know kind of what kind of post brought you in? Was there something about something that I wrote that was interesting to you? And just find out if there was a specific blog post that drove them to you or this. And a lot of advisors are on YouTube and do a great job of that. So a lot of times it's kind of coming in off of a particular YouTube video, but that's one way to kind of demonstrate that work. But it's also peppering some stories into your discovery meeting process. So yeah, just this week I helped a client with this. So if they're explaining to you why they're here, I've got to make this big decision, and is being able to say, oh, yep, I've just helped a client with this. These are some of the things that we took them through, and also being able to speak to some of the emotion around that as well, I think can be really useful. So coming up with that avatar of that typical client, who am I speaking to? So sometimes when I'm writing a LinkedIn post, or sometimes when I'm thinking in a discovery meeting, I kind of match that client up to a current client in my head to say, you are very similar to this one client in my head. So I'm kind of speaking to what are some things I've solved for that person and how have they thought through each of these decisions that they've had to make. So it's just thinking about who am I speaking to, both in my marketing, but who am I speaking to right in front of me? And what are some of maybe anticipating what some of their concerns and questions and issues might be. So do you actually create the estate planning documents? No, we don't. We have either connect them with an attorney or they can go through and create their own, through a service, but that's not something we do in-house. We don't have attorneys in-house to do that. Back to my slide deck here. So taking them through case studies. So thinking about those avatar, maybe ideas. So using it in a LinkedIn post or a YouTube video, using it in a blog post. So this is all going to help your SEO, all going to help AEO, the AI optimization as well. And then having those quick stories to embed in as you're describing what you do and who you serve in those discovery meetings as well. So it's good for fit check. Say, I do my best work with this type of person, right? So these are the things that I solve for. and reflecting back some of the things that they've shared with you, of course, and building that into. And also just being comfortable with some of the self-promotion. So this is something I have to help my husband with all the time. He's going to be so embarrassed by me sharing this, but on Monday I was helping him with his self-review through work. And it's just, he's not good at going in and saying like, this is what I did really well in the last year. He's so humble. And so it's just also being able to say, here's why I'm really good at this. This is something that I have expertise in, and being able to project that confidence. So might be even just practicing self-promotion in some different ways. So being able to talk about yourself, talk about your work, but also deciding how you want to talk about it. So it's saying, would it be helpful if I shared a little bit about my background and expertise, or would it be helpful to you if I shared with you what our typical client is like? And maybe we can see if that is a fit, or you see some similarity in yourself for that. It's just kind of being able to share more about who you are, who you do your best work with, and what you're really good at. And so there are different ways you can promote yourself through LinkedIn, website, all of that, but being able to kind of verbally share that as well. How are you different? What do you do well? Um, and I actually think I just saw a couple of questions pop up. Let me make sure I can hit these. Okay, when you go through discovery, are you using the interface while you're in the meeting? Are you asking questions, the planning software such as Money Guide Pro? We are not gathering specifics yet during that discovery meeting. I do ask some fun questions. So I was going to mention this in a little bit. I will ask questions like, if you had $50 million hit your bank account tomorrow, taxes already paid, nobody knows about it, what would you do with that money? So I like to ask some of those dreaming questions. This comes from Brendan Fraser, did the Ultimate Discovery Meeting program webinar series. And so that's, I think, one of the questions that he likes to use there. And so understanding for them, what are some of the fun splurgy things? Because I will go back in later and add that into my financial planning software, but I'll also connect during that meeting of, these are things that I help people fund. So if you're looking to buy a vacation home later on when I'm talking about my services, saying, yeah, and there's different tax implications of liquidating some of your big stock positions and thinking about how to fund this vacation home and how you might want to handle it. And if you want to turn it into a short-term rental, like these are things we help our clients with all the time. So learning what some of those stretch goals are, like how do I get you there? So if you want to leave your high stress, high pressure job and navigate into a lower stress, lower pressure job, and you want to see financially how to handle that, we do that. And here's an example of how I do that. So I like to kind of take those nuggets and then later in my discovery meeting process, I do show a sample financial plan, and I like to pepper some of those little goals into that financial plan. So those are things that I do like to gather information that'll be useful later, and I can kind of bring back up and reflect back in to the conversation later. Also, there's another exercise that I do, and I'll show you just kind of related to that too. I do a wheel of life exercise in my discovery meeting as well, because I like to understand who I'm talking to and get to know them better. So, wheel of life exercise, there's all different programs that do it, but it's ultimately trying to understand a little bit about their different areas of wellness. And I know this sounds like, but Emily, you're a financial planner and you help people with tax planning and estate planning and other areas. But we're trying to help people use money to maximize their happiness and enjoyment of their lives, right? So what we're trying to understand are, what are some of the different areas that maybe they have some gaps? And so talking about how do we use financial planning to help support your physical health, or, what's going on with your physical environment, your home? Oh, you want to move. You hate your house, or, this is something that you want to solve for, and financial planning can solve for it. And every single financial planning area has other considerations and trade-offs. So how do you see and treat the whole human and kind of work with them as well? So those are some things that, as I'm getting to know somebody, this is a way to ask somebody, check in. How are you doing? And what are some areas that you need some help and support with? So how do you potentially kind of close some of those gaps? And that will come back up in showing a sample financial plan, showing sample tax plans, showing all of that and say, yes, and here's how and where we'd model in, buying a new house or doing something a little bit differently or spending a little bit more money or making a change to your job. So this is sometimes where you learn from somebody where they're looking to make a job change. And these aren't things that you always get to know from somebody in a discovery meeting, but this is a really kind of cool way to do that. So sorry, I'm jumping around. Just saw that question, like, oh, I want to jump into this. Um, so is your fit check meeting and discovery meeting two separate conversations or often combined into one? So Nick, that's a good question. So just depends. So in the um, intro and discovery meeting process, a lot of times it's just one meeting. So if somebody is a good fit, we continue the conversation. So it's really kind of coming on and saying, okay, this can be a 5-minute call or this can be an hour-long call. So it's really getting to that know quickly of a recent call that I had wasn't a great fit. And we just said, great, so nice to meet you. Love to send you some resources that will help you and kind of get them to where they're going, or continue to use the rest of the call for that fit check, right? So it might be that, yes, you're looking for what I do. I do comprehensive financial planning, and these are the things that I help support, and these are the problems I help solve, and this is what you're looking for, but I'm still doing that fit check of, are they the right personality to kind of fit who I do my best work for? And they're doing the same thing for us, right? So is this somebody that I want to get advice from over time? Is this somebody that I want to help support some of these different goals? So we're both doing that mutual fit check through the rest of that conversation. So that can be two separate conversations. It can be combined into one. But really in that discovery meeting process, it's really just kind of treating it like the first few minutes is that really quick fit check of, is what I do a match? And then the rest of the conversation is this a good fit for ongoing service? How do you balance sharing strategies online versus helping DIY clients for free who are in similar situation? Um, so so if you're kind of asking about like, is my content meant to just help somebody do things on their own and learn on their own? Yeah, people can kind of take things from it. I think that sometimes some of the content is just educational of somebody's going to come on my blog and learn about um, how 401k rule of 55, how to get money out of your 401k if you're retiring at 55 or later. Some people are going to come to my website and just learn about that and execute it. And some people are going to come to our website and say, I need help with these types of ideas or strategies. And okay, let me go over and check the rest of them out and kind of book an intro call. You're going to get some of it. And honestly, I'm fine helping DIYers find out good information. There's enough bad information out there. If you've spent any time on any social media, there are tons of people who make videos that don't make any sense. So for any advisor who can write some of these blog posts or write some of these LinkedIn posts and just help people help themselves better, that's great. If you have a couple thousand people that see your blog post and 2 of them book an intro call and they're a great fit and they're going to be a great client, that's great. So I don't necessarily speak to the DIYers. My content isn't really meant to like, here's how to go do it. Like go log into your provider and go do these things. But a lot of it is educational to say, here are some topics that I support my clients on. And here are some topics that if somebody is a DIYer, they can also learn from and help themselves with. Do you assess risk tolerance of your clients? And if yes, what techniques or third-party tools do you use? Yes, so we do that after we're onboarding a client. So after we've moved through a discovery process with our clients and we've determined, I like you like me, let's do some paperwork, we do our contract, then we do an investment onboarding meeting. So during an investment onboarding meeting, that's where we're going to do the risk assessment tool, get their risk score, and understand how are we going to invest that portfolio. So we use Riskalyze for that tool, but that's something that doesn't happen during the discovery process. We honestly really don't talk about investments during the discovery process, or we don't really talk about risk during that discovery process. It's really just saying, are the services going to be a match? And also, are they willing to work with an advisor who is full service and going to help them with investments? So I don't work well with people who want to get a phone call every time we're going to do trades, or somebody who wants to be a DIYer that gets a little bit of help. So we're working with outsourcers, people who just want us to trade and rebalance those portfolios. So typically, they're not going to make a decision to work with us based on a risk score of their investments or based on an investment proposal. We don't even do those during this process. It's just, yep, if you're going to outsource it to us, we're going to use low cost, diversified portfolio, but we're going to focus the relationship on the financial planning and what we're going to do for you here. And that's often where too, I'll share with prospective clients that a lot of the investment management, I personally feel that if an advisor can tell you they can significantly beat the market or a diversified portfolio, run, right? There's something wrong there. And typically, clients who are coming to us are saying, yep, I want to have a diversified portfolio of investments that meets my risk tolerance, that's low cost, and that is tax efficient. And I'll talk about how the biggest value that a financial planner can bring to you is tax planning, is helping to find all those little spots of where we can save tax dollars over a long period of time. So, in one of my goals in a discovery meeting is if I'm not a fit to work with them, I want them to be sold on the idea of working with an advisor who does a lot of tax planning, that this is important. And so we talk about how tax planning is a game of inches. It's finding all these little pieces, all these places to save tax money over your lifetime. And all of that adds up to sometimes 6 or 7 figures of tax savings. So, all those places, so when we talk about investments, for example, per your question, it's talking about it's less about which mutual fund or which ETF we're picking, but it's really about, how do we bucket money into those different accounts? So, typically talk to prospective clients just high level about what asset location is. So, investing money in your Roth differently than you invest your pre-tax dollars, which is different than you invest your taxable brokerage accounts. Those get different investments. And how adding to those types of accounts and distributing money from those accounts is all part of tax planning. And that somebody who is consciously doing that for you is going to save you more money, and ultimately produce better investment performance and balances over a long period of time. So it's kind of even bringing some of those investment conversations back to tax planning, demonstrating how tax planning is not just, hey, it's now early 2026. Can you figure out a way to save me money on my 2025 tax return? Not a lot of things you can do at this point, but maybe we can look at some different areas in 2026. But more importantly, we can help you understand your taxes, and we can help project out, years into the future, some of these different ideas. So it's thinking about multi-year Roth conversions, thinking about reducing surprises. So talking about scenario analysis, how we can kind of run what your year might look like so you don't have that surprise. So some of the different things. So actually finally coming back to what's on my slide. So the emotional aspect or the emotional weight of some of these decisions, it's understanding, what does tax planning look like for them before? And does this feel like something that's like gives them a lot of anxiety? Like, do they have a lot of avoidance around tax planning? Can you make it feel less stressful and easier? Is it something where they feel stressed that they're paying more taxes than they should, or that they're missing something? I get a lot of that, like, I feel like I might be missing something here, or there's something that I'm not doing that I should. And it's finding out maybe some of that money history. So money history can also include, are there any significant tax events or financial events that have happened in your past? So have you had a big surprise tax bill? Maybe you exercised some non-qualified stock options and didn't realize this big tax bill would come. Or I have a lot of clients who have RSUs come in and they do the supplemental standard 22% tax withholding rate all throughout the year. And they think, yep, my taxes withheld, I'm good. But if they're in the 32, 35, 37% tax bracket rate, they're going to have a big surprise tax bill at the end of the year. So it's being able to understand what's happened to you in the past and how has this process gone for you. I had somebody come to me once that was so tax avoidant and made her so anxious. She hadn't filed a couple of years worth of tax returns. She just like ostrich, like head in the sand. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to deal with it. And so we got her like organized, got her all her information together to the CPA. I even helped her fill out her CPA questionnaire. I'm like, it's okay, like we got this. So helping somebody through where they are emotionally with any topic that they're going to cover, but with tax planning too. So demystify it, make it less scary. Show them some of the tools or ideas that you might kind of take them through and help them make sure that they feel like you've got them. You're going to help them and you're going to help get more out of their CPA relationship. A lot of times people will come to us where their CPA relationship is, yep, this person just files my taxes, and they don't really know that there could be some tax planning that happens in the fall or some additional communication with the CPA that makes that process easier. So those are some things that we can maybe understand. Maybe they have some shame associated with their taxes in the past, or maybe not paying taxes, or having a big tax bill and then having to scramble and figure out, like, how do I cover this tax bill? So understanding what that is and helping them through that and being able to talk a little bit about that. So you can get some of those things out of the discovery meeting where they're saying, they're not only going to help me just feel less stressed about taxes, about any other topic that is important to them. They're also going to think about all these other areas that are associated with tax planning and how to save taxes over a long period of time. But they're also going to just hold my hand through this process and be a thought partner to me and educate me and help me understand my finances. So that's what a lot of people are seeking, is really just a lot of people, at least that I work with, are highly intelligent. They're really good at their jobs. And so we want to tell them, we're just as good at this as you are at your job, right? So like, you're really good, marketing professional or whatever it is that you do. I'm that good at this, right? So we know that, so some of the insights, so this is the other jump insight that stood out to me, is they're actually able to measure emotional intelligence during a meeting. And so those measurements are, balanced talk time. So kind of tracking how much the advisor is talking versus the prospective client. So how much are you letting them tell you about the emotional impact of tax planning, or what their money history is, what they're looking for? It's just kind of creating these lists of questions. I'm a question collector. I have this huge giant spreadsheet of all these questions that I like to pepper in at different points and different ways I like to ask questions. So finding these questions that work for you, that allow them to talk, um, adding in some empathy statements to say, yeah, it's not fun to have these surprise tax bills, or completely understand that took you by surprise, or that you feel this way about these concerns that you have kind of coming in. And also sharing that excitement with them of I'm excited to take you on this journey moving forward, and like absolutely we can solve for that. And so being able to bring that excitement in there and doing some of those emotional check-ins. So how would that feel, if a year from now we had this solved? And so the sentiment gains, I think these things are important. So these are some of the insights that are kind of interesting, because of course, in a discovery meeting, it's important to have that positive sentiment from the person you're talking to. So are they engaged? Does it sound like conversationally that they value what you do, and that they're going to be a good fit from that perspective as well? So building some trust and rapport. So it's establishing some of that connection. So this is where I was going to show you that wheel of life thing that I already jumped to, which is, how do you connect with that person beyond just the numbers of that person? So how do you connect with their needs and where they're going? So getting to know a little bit more about what they see happening with their career, what they're trying to solve for, what their issues are. So I had a client 2 weeks ago who, her biggest issue in her whole life right now, something that's sitting right in the front of her head all the time, is she is a super picky eater kid. Like, this kid eats 4 foods. And so, it's hard for her to think about all these other things, because she's literally thinking every single day, how do I get my kid to eat broccoli, or whatever it is that she's trying to like get them to do. And so sometimes it's just even saying, how do I help this person with their biggest issue? Even if it's something like, is there a picky eating expert? So that's something that we kind of pulled some information together on, or allocating some budget. So in a discovery meeting, it's saying, yeah, allocating some intentional cash flow or money spend on that, or, using some of your, RSU distributions or stock sale to set money aside to help support whatever it is that you need. If it's a personal trainer or Peloton bike, if your needs are physical health, or putting money towards a good high quality CPA so that you can have your taxes prepared, or investing in financial planning process. It's setting money aside to help support the things that are really important to them. And that gets that connection and buy-in. So that's why I like to dig a little bit more about who they are, what their needs are, and financial planning and money conversations can solve that. Can help support somebody through some of these big life things that are happening. So I've helped clients pay for fertility treatments, or decide if they're going to have a third kid. There are things that we help clients with job changes and making these major life decisions that are out there. So my conversation this morning, helping a woman invest this big gift in giving her kids money for down payments on their homes. And so it's moving the needle on helping people make these major life decisions and understanding what their life priorities are and making sure that you share with them that we can take them where they want to go and in a tax efficient manner. So how do we pepper in all the things we do that get them there and focus on them and focus on their goals, but also along the way, get them organized, make sure everything else is done that they need to have done, that we've got them. Somebody asked, did you create your own questionnaire documents for each meeting? For instance, the discovery process, do you have a document that you follow and ask questions? Um, yeah, so over time, I am a big believer in having scripts, workflows, processes. Man, some of you are like, she hasn't even brought up workflows today. She always brings up workflows. I have a workflow for everything. I have steps for everything. So for every single meeting, I do like to send questions in advance. So I'm a big believer in any of the bigger questions I want to ask, especially in a discovery meeting, sending those questions ahead of time because um, people who are extroverts like me are happy to just answer stuff on the fly. But people like my husband, oh, I'm bringing him up again. He's an introvert and he doesn't like to be put on the spot. So a lot of times, like I'll tell him, okay, is today Wednesday? Wednesday. I always forget with the Monday off. Okay, I think today's Wednesday. Uh, no, today's Tuesday. Oh, okay. So today's Tuesday. On Saturday, I want to have this conversation with you. And so here's some of the things I'm going to ask you about some of the things, decisions that we're going to make, right? Like what camps are we going to send our kids to? But same thing with clients. It's saying, here are some of the things I want to talk about in this meeting, or I was thinking about you, and these are some things I want to maybe talk about ahead. So I have some discovery questions that I'll typically send to somebody ahead of time. And then when I'm actually asking them in the meeting, a lot of times for people who kind of get stressed and want to prepare, they do it. And for the extroverts, it doesn't matter. Like they're happy to just answer it on the fly, and maybe they didn't even look at my questionnaire. So yes, I do. I've built just kind of a cadence with each type of meeting where there's agenda, there's typical questions that I'll ask them, there's typical data that I need just so I get organized. So as I've kind of grown in my career over almost 2 decades, it's just saying if I do my best work, if I ask everybody the same question in the same meeting sequence, typically, and you leave some room for flexibility in there, but it also just kind of allows you to do everything for everyone. So same thing with when you're looking at some of the different tools that you might be using, like sending a tax letter from Holistiplan, doing the scenario analysis in a fall meeting, or going over the tax report. This is something that I do in plan delivery. So each of the different tools that you use or each of the different processes that you like to take people through. So if you're going to do a wheel of life exercise or something different, it's saying, what meeting am I going to do that? What data do I need? What questions do I need to ask? And building that out. So I would start with, if you're not already doing a kind of a set process, is figuring out what am I doing currently, and then break it apart. So 2, 3 years ago, I sat down with a consultant and basically said, I'm like gathering all these different ideas about things I can use in a discovery meeting, for example. And can you just help me think through and talk through? Like, let me break it all apart. These are all the things I want to gather, all the information I want to know. This is everything I want to know about the client. I'm feeling overwhelmed because there's so much I can cover and so much I can ask and so much I can talk about. What do I fit in where? And it's kind of even just looking at it like a puzzle that you put on a timeline and saying what fits in well. So I would just think about your processes and who do you serve? What do you need to know? What do you work with? When do you do which step? So not all of you do all the planning up front or do a tax planning meeting in the fall. And so it's figuring out where your cadence is and where am I going to use those tools. So even literally like put it on pieces of paper and line it up on your desk, like visually figure out where you need to plug all of those different pieces in and where to kind of come up with that. But really, and it's also setting that goal. So you're setting your client avatar. Who am I speaking to? Who do I serve best? And what do I do for them? And how am I different? What do I do differently for that particular client? And then it's figuring out, how much of that do I want to show in that discovery meeting? Or do I want to send a video ahead? Do I want to send them onto my website ahead? Do I want to gather information ahead? So I've made the personal decision not to gather data ahead of a discovery call because I don't want to be responsible for data if I'm not going to work with that client ongoing. and I just want to have conversation. But it just depends on what works for you and what the fit is for you, what you'd like to include there. But it's just setting that up and saying, let's build process around that. Let's think about sending either an agenda or a pre-meeting email, post-meeting email, in-meeting plan of what you're going to potentially do. But the goal is I want to have high quality conversation. I want to do a fit check. I want to demonstrate what I do. I want to talk about what I do, and I want to take people through that process. So I'm going to skip around again, but I'm going to take you into one of the things that I do in our meetings just to kind of show what we do differently, is taking them into a list of what we do. So like we know inherently all the crazy things we do for our clients, right? And so I made a list literally on Excel at one point to say like what are all the separate things that we do? Like what are all those things we do? We ended up putting it on our website. And so I will go into a discovery meeting and just talk about these are the areas we help you with investment management. This is where I talk a little bit about some of the behavioral finance areas that we cover. So some of the values aligned goal planning, or essentially goals and values that we work with clients on. And you scroll all the way down. Okay, here's how we support taxes, which also flow into some other areas too, like the equity comp tab. But it's just talking about here are some things we talk about and spelling it out. So thinking about in your discovery process, what are the things that you do for your clients, and taking somebody even through that kind of list and having that on your website. So we decided rather than having a brochure, because we don't meet with people in person, and I don't want to just pull up a PDF, having something live on our website allows me to also send this to people after the fact to just say, this is what we do. And you did tell me in earlier in the conversation that if you had $50 million hit your bank account, that you'd love to do more giving. So this is something that we do, is some of that charitable giving guidance. And so, then it's asking some questions. So do you have a donor advised fund, or have you made those contributions before? You're 70 and a half or older. Have you done qualified charitable distributions or QCDs? Are you familiar with what they are? Has your advisor helped you with that? So some of bringing in some of that earlier conversation into this list here and talking about here's some of the areas that we kind of fit that need. Also, just from an expectation setting perspective, it's just letting them know, what happens next. So, if we got along in this discovery meeting and you want to move forward, here's what that process looks like, and here's what happens next in our process. So, here's where we do, to the earlier question, like that risk-aligned analysis or gather data, and then ongoing support. This is also where you have another opportunity to talk about tax planning. So what are some of the ongoing things that you help support clients with? Is supporting them through some of these important life stage conversations. So for somebody who says, we want to buy that second vacation home and we don't know if we want to liquidate a bunch of RSUs to do that, we can say, this is something we help you with, and this is an ongoing topic that we help support you with. So it's just kind of building out some of that collateral in there too. So I gave you a couple examples of that. And then just the final thing I want to just share is using that meeting to just show who you are, show a little bit of personality, and loosen up a little bit. I think that that's something that I didn't necessarily do as well earlier in my career, where kind of felt like in my 20s and early 30s, like I have to show up like super competent and super smart, and it's less of that conversational, like empathetic appeal. So it's just being a human that's curious about another human and having really good conversation with them and getting to know them. And then later, as you are demonstrating your value and demonstrating the things that you do and listing out the things that you do, bringing some of that conversation back in about buying the vacation home or making the 83B election or some of the like issues that are top of mind and kind of, close at hand for you as well.
Yeah, Emily, I am so impressed with how intentional you are with getting to know clients and prospective clients. I'm not an advisor, but from the client perspective, if someone like sent me a questionnaire or was that interested in getting to know me and understanding my background with money and with taxes, I would immediately be sold because it's so important when it comes to building trust to feel seen and understood, you know?
hmm Yeah, and the conversation goes a million different ways. So there's not any just like one way these conversations go, because it just depends on like what's said in the beginning of the meeting will influence how the rest of the meeting goes. And so sometimes it's also that what's his name? Patrick Lencioni, he wrote this book called Getting Naked, and it just talks about immediately starting like, let's solve this problem. Like I'm curious about you and interested and like you have this immediate problem. Like, let's just start talking about it right now. So I had a client last week come to me and they had to make this big stock buyback decision. So SpaceX was doing a stock buyback for their employees on Wednesday. So I talked to him on Monday. He's like, in 2 days, I have to decide how much of my private stock that I want to sell back to the company. And I've got to make this decision in 2 days. We're like, all right, like let's roll up the sleeves and let's talk about it. And so sometimes, there's not any just one way these meetings go. It's not a script where I'm talking at them for an hour like I do in these webinars. It's
Right.
a lot of questions and understanding, but sometimes it's immediately helping. Sometimes it's immediately showing, like, here's how I help clients exactly like you. Here's a situation where I faced that problem before, and here's how we tackled it. And, I'm interested and excited, and I love my clients, and I want to help you. Like, it's just conveying that across in a meeting.
Yeah, yeah. I do have a question, not from the audience, from me actually.
Okay.
One of the first kind of hurdles when it comes to starting tax planning, if you don't already have a system in place, if it's not something an advisor does, is collecting that first tax return. And you said that part of your like fit check process is seeing how willing a prospective client is with sharing that information. So, do you have things that you say about like why you're asking for a tax return or why it's important that they share that document with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I didn't get to show that here, but I will often show like sample tax report, sample scenario analysis, sample multi-year Roth projection, just to say, hey, these are things we're going to do together. And so we ask for all of this data because one, all of these decisions are connected to each other. So if I don't know about some of these big goals or outflows or spending you want to do, I'm not going to do a good multi-year Roth conversion analysis for you. Or if I don't know about other things that are happening throughout the year, I'm not going to do a good scenario analysis for you. And certainly, if I don't have your tax return information, I'm not going to be able to guide you on a bunch of different decisions. And so those are things that I do kind of share in that meeting of this is where I'm taking you and these are the things we're going to do for you and we're going to help you get organized and kind of get all this data together. But I do my best work when I can see everything and know everything. So I explained to them in that process, we are going to ask for the past 2 years tax returns. We are going to ask for things like your year-to-date pay stub and your upcoming stock grants and other pieces of information like that so I can serve that person better. So I wouldn't say we're at 100% where everyone sends us their tax return, but we're really close to that. So we get a decent buy-in, but we kind of share with them, this is how I'm going to take you where you want to go, but this is where we're going to spot all these opportunities over a long period of time to save you a ton of money in taxes. We need to see the tax return.
Yeah. And just to be clear, you offer that service to all of your clients. You
Yeah.
offer
So
that tax planning as a service to everyone.
yeah, and it's just this is another personal decision I've made in this industry is I don't have service tiers or levels. I do one thing, right? I do
Yeah.
full comprehensive financial planning for
Yep.
everybody because I don't want to say like, oh, we're in this meeting, Alana, and you don't have enough assets with me for me to like talk about your PNC insurance. We're not going to run that holistic plan report. Like that's something other clients get. So it's something where everybody, as long as they meet, they're the right type of client, right size, everything, they get everything from a service perspective. That way, I'm not like, I don't want to hold back. Like if I can help you in this way, I want to help you in this way. So that's just a decision that I've made, and every single client is getting the same service level.
I love that. That's so great. Well, we are just about at time. Thank you, Emily, for everything. I love sitting in on your sessions. I take notes the entire time. I'm sure all of our attendees are doing the same as well. Thank you everyone for staying on for the hour. I know that your time is valuable and there are a lot of things that, are worthy of your attention right now. So thank you for spending some time with us. My colleague Tracy sent a link in the chat there. If you want to learn more about Holistiplan, you can watch a demo on your own time. You can schedule a one-on-one demo. You can start a free trial if you just want to dive in. So if you want to learn more about what we do at Holistiplan, you can click that link there. Again, thank you. We will send the recording of today's session and the slides later this week. And I think that's all we have for you guys today.